I love you. I looked at her in the crowd, dancing with her friends, looking pretty as ever. Her hair bounced as she laughed, being goofy. I smiled as I dreamily watched the girl I love having the time of her life at her birthday party. Her smile lit up the room and butterflies burst in my stomach as I saw her catch me staring at her. I smiled shyly as she motioned for me to come over and join her. I would have been satisfied with just the staring, but I couldn't believe she actually paid attention to me. She was an angel. I made my way towards her as I drank in her beautiful cocktail dress. My hand rested on her waist as the slow music began. Bodies moving in rhythm, smooth as a snake and as graceful as a swan. It was too much for me. The music and her, looking at me smiling with those gem-like eyes. Ken, are you okay? She asked as she leaned in with a look of worry. You seem a little distracted. It's nothing, I just need some air. I'll come with, she interjected, grabbing my arm as I was about to pass her. I stared at her hand on my arm, the soft, delicate fingers touching my skin, making my hair stand on ends. She must have noticed because she grinned at me. I nodded, guiding her through the sea of dancing people, her guests. The fact that she'd rather spend time with me than be at her own birthday party told me that she was definitely the one. Wow, sure is cold up here, she said as I saw her subtly run her fingers on her arms. I took my coat off without a thought and draped it around her petite frame. She tried to give it back, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. The silence was comfortable as we took in the beauty of the night, looking down her garden glowing with fireflies. That's when I felt the softest touch on my cheek. She turned red as she quickly moved her lips away from my face. I couldn't resist myself. I leaned in front of her face, looked her in the eyes, and smiled as I choked her with my handkerchief. Muffled scream filled the quiet environment as her body tensed and then relaxed in my arms, the drugs taking complete control over my body. I swiftly picked her up and climbed down the balcony. Placing her in my passenger seat, I drove off to home, where my beloved wife would be waiting for me. I needed Juliet because I loved my wife to death. Juliet was just another attraction whom I'd used. My wife smiled as she came up to me and said, You're home early. Just wanted to spend some time with you, honey. She smiled at my cheesiness as she decided to wait for me in bed. I sent her to her room as I quietly carried Juliet back into my house and down to the basement. The light flicked on automatically as I entered the musty place. Shelves with huge boxes containing the remains of my previous encounters with lovely ladies ran through the walls. I needed to find a way to get rid of the smell, though. Yet it was another thing that attracted me to them and made me hungry for their blood. I carefully placed Juliet on a cushioned seat right in the middle of the room as I prepared for the upcoming event. She slowly opened her eyes as the drug's effect died. She tried to scream, but it made her gag go deeper down her throat. This is how I wanted to see her. Afraid. Afraid to be with me. It made me feel superior. It made me feel like her owner. I walked all around her as I took in her eyes full of fear. I eyed my collection of toys on the table, deciding which one I wanted to play with today. I took out a thick, rough rope and tied a noose on one of the bars above, all under the surveillance of my new companion. I dragged Juliet's chair right under the noose as she tried to struggle against the drug that was now paralyzing her body, her brain still alive and alert. Untying her, I carefully mounted her up on the chair and tied the noose around the neck, kicking the chair out of her reach. Watching her struggle for air gave me satisfaction. I was now setting up my camera, recording everything happening in the room. When I realized she was almost going to run out of air, I placed the chair back under her feet, making her gasp for all the oxygen she could before I dropped her again. She was beautiful, being given hope of survival again and again, but yet it was snatched away every single time. When she seemed like she couldn't take it anymore and started turning purple, I kicked the chair out of reach and watched in content as I saw the life drain out of her bleeding eyes. I sighed as I realized she was dead. This one definitely didn't last long. I loved her, and this way she could stay with me forever. I released her limped corpse from the ropes and placed her in one of the empty boxes, draining some blood away from her arm, and placed the box on the shelves with all my other prized possessions. I would take care of her tomorrow morning. Right now, my wife needed me. I walked upstairs, clean from my shower, as I got into bed with my wife, who snuggled to my side. I automatically smiled and put my arm around her, my hand extending to stroke her protruding belly. My son would have an amazing role model, I thought as I kissed her tummy. She smiled at me, but the smile automatically turned to a frown as she noticed the vial of blood in my hands. She backed away from me and said, "Please, Ken, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't drink it. I've already had too much from all those innocent women you keep attacking." We both know the drill, my love. My father fed blood to my mother when I was in her belly, and now it's your turn. That kid is going to be the strongest of his generation, I stated, proud to have such an amazing family. This way, I can always love you without the fear of being attracted to anyone else. By killing anyone that attracts you? She asked and scoffed as my smile gave away my answer. It's for the best of all three of us. I made my wife drink the concoction, more like shoved it down her throat. She gagged and struggled a bit, but she gave in anyway. "I love you, honey," I said as I pulled her close to my frame. I didn't fail to notice that I did not get a reaction. Like, share, subscribe.